You may have noticed the name Willie Pye in your newsfeed. It is because Georgia decided to execute an inmate by the name of Willie Pye. Now, Willie Pye's crimes, no one is arguing that he was exactly where he belonged. The argument is whether or not further action was warranted based on a lot of information behind the scenes about Willie Pye's case, about the lawyer he was appointed, about the overall process. See, Willie Pye is said to have a very low IQ, and typically, most states follow a moral standard too, where they say we don't we don't do that with people who are below a certain IQ. You really can't be sure what a person's full grasp is under a certain IQ. So they say we don't go down that road. As long as we can get the person life in prison, as long as we can get them a proper sentence for the crime and make sure we keep them off the street if that is what is needed. There have been multiple appeals since 2020 to try and appeal to the state to not execute Willie Pye. There are jurors, there are people from both sides of the case that they were not okay or in favor of this whatsoever. No, it's not always just about justice for the family. It's also about keeping people off the street who don't belong on the street. Well, he was off the street and he was going to stay off the street. But clemency was denied, and overall it draws a lot of questions about the overall court system in Georgia, the lawyers who are being appointed as public defenders, what their end game is in all of it. Now, there have been lengthy filings made to the state regarding Willie Pye. It has been alleged that he was offered a deal that was not communicated to him, which would have secured him life in prison rather than facing a death sentence. It's been alleged that never happened. It was not communicated to him. It was offered, but never communicated, because it is also alleged that the lawyer involved very much wanted him facing death. Nobody wants to go to bat for someone who has committed absolutely horrendous crimes, and no one is. Like I said, he was exactly where he belonged, but it does highlight a very broken system in Georgia. It's not even broken. I can't ever say it properly functioned. A dysfunctional system. That's what we'll call it, a very dysfunctional system. As we also got to see that another man who has spent the last decade behind bars was released. And that's over in a different part of Georgia. That's over in Albany, Georgia. A man over in Albany, Georgia, who was believed to be, a part of a crime. He was charged with that crime, and then he just sat behind bars. Let me read you the article really quickly that recently came out about that. It says that he is believed to be part of the nation's longest pretrial detention and finally walking free after accepting a plea deal on Wednesday. Maurice Jimmerson sat behind bars for more than a decade after being indicted for a 2013 shooting that killed Desmond Williams and William Davis Jr. The state alleges that Jimmerson drove the car and participated in the drive-by shooting that killed the two men. On Wednesday, Jimmerson was reunited with his 14-year-old daughter after not seeing her for nearly 11 years. He could only describe his freedom in one word: blessed. A negotiated plea deal of 30 years of probation was the deciding factor in it all. The time he has already spent behind bars is being credited, which means he's only serving 19 years of probation outside of jail. Along with a 19-year probation, Jimmerson is banned from the county where the crime was committed and surrounding counties. He is also required not to possess any firearms and is required to get his high school diploma within 12 months of following his release from incarceration. Jimmerson is one of 5 men charged with the shooting and killing. While some of his co-defendants have pled not guilty throughout the years, Jimmerson remained behind bars for 11 years, never being convicted of anything at all. It wasn't until last year that Jimmerson got his day in court, which ended with a mistrial. Now Jimmerson's mom is ready to bring him home. Another ongoing trial in the case of missing Tiffany Foster over in Coweta County in Georgia. That case has also seen what people could argue to be some constitutional rights being violated by the authorities who have been interacting with Reginald Robertson, the main suspect in that case, who is about to go to trial, hopefully. We hope that he gets his day in court and not 10 years later, because Reginald Robertson was due in court this morning and his lawyer had to file a conflict. You know, her schedule is full. They've got her booked in multiple different courtrooms in one day. You can't expect somebody to be in two different courtrooms. And if this is how they're treating their public defenders with their schedules, still, it's highly discouraging to hear that none of this is really getting better. And then on top of it, they're maintaining their ability to put people to death, which is a big problem when you have so many issues. This man over in Albany, he's not the only one being held for lengthy times, no court appearances, nothing being done as it should be. These are extreme violations. Your case is supposed to be heard within a certain amount of time. There are a lot of factors in that, whether or not you apply for a speedy trial, whether or not you waive your speedy trial rights, whether, who your counsel is. There's a lot that goes into that. But these people aren't getting any of those options. They're being told there's no room on the schedule for years. They're being told that they don't get certain rights for years. And that is a huge, huge problem. And they shouldn't be allowed right now to put people to death. When your courts are not functioning properly, you cannot ensure that the standard of justice is being upheld, and you cannot even guarantee that those convictions are certain, especially when you have defenders, public defenders who are tasked with so many cases at once. How can they focus individually on these cases in the first place? They don't even have time to appear in court. How are they working their cases? So anyways, lots to pay attention to in Georgia. So back to Willie Pye. We don't have warm feelings about anything that he did or was convicted of. We don't promote that type of behavior at all, but in a civilized society, you're supposed to act civilized and you're supposed to uphold the Constitution above all else. And it does not sound like that is what happened there. And here's the downside. The family of the victim regarding Maurice Jimmerson, who was held behind bars for all this time when he should have had his case move forward. He should have received or not received a conviction eventually, so that he could either be freed, let go, or he could move through the prison to serve out his sentence. And then you also free up that room in the jail. You send him off to prison. There's a reason all this stuff works the way it works. The victim's family in that case is not happy with this plea deal. They don't think it was enough time. They don't feel that justice was necessarily done in as far as the matter with Jimmerson. And it's going to be hard to disagree with them. But he got that deal because they messed up. He got that deal because they waited all that time. They pushed it to the side. They didn't deal with it. They did not abide by their constitutional system. So it's sad for the inmate who's waiting to have his day in court, for the victim's family who's also waiting for the same thing and hoping that justice is properly applied. Justice wasn't able to be properly applied because if they would have went forward, there would have been big problems to talk about. But yeah, if Georgia does not rectify these problems and the problems within their county clerk's offices, because you've got people from the top down fighting to get FOIA requests filled from Georgia and all over the state. They seem to think that they have a monopoly on the records that they don't have to hand them over to the general public, and that's just not the case. We have issues with every single county that we've ever FOIA'd in Georgia, and that's a big deal. That's a problem. So anyhow, I just wanted to talk about that real quick. I saw a lot of negative commentary about how Willie Pye got exactly what he deserved, and if that's your opinion and you are for the death penalty, that's one thing, but it's not about that. It's about our courts working in a just constitutional manner. It's about everybody having their rights, being heard in court, having proper counsel, and if you make an appeal that you didn't have those things, it should be heard.